course, me and Eddie sitting there, and we was going, what do you reckon happens if we take this down? Blue!
That's what blowed up the loudest. Did you blow it up?
I was doing a bale jar thing, and it had a bale in there, and you had to pump all the air out of it. And rather than turning the pump it out, I turned the pump it in. So I was just laying down on that. Me and William Gallon, I think it was. Boy, both of us just pumping like crazy, and all of a sudden it blew in that glass.
CC home. A lot of good memories there. Somebody else?
Mr. Hahn, though, he probably left this world wondering about them poor old volleyballs. He come in there one day and he had 2 flat volleyballs. He said, air has weight. But now, remember, Mr. Hahn, if you argue with Mr. Hahn, he's going to argue till next week. You can keep it on the same subject for 2 months if you just keep arguing about it. I told him, I said, Bill, you got to be out of your mind. I said, air don't weigh nothing. Well, he said, just take it back there and pump it up and bring it back out here and set it on these scales. Had the 2 flat ones sitting on the scales, and they weighed, it'll just pointing straight up. I'd run back there in the lab, and this ought to be interesting. Just sock the hydrogen to it, and just drop it. That thing about to flow away, He set it up on there, and it right over toward that flat one, and I said, see, never did explain it to me.
Thank you, Paul. That's a good story. Somebody else? Max, you got any good stories?
No, only tell the truth. I only had one.
Anybody else? Let me ask you then, just after we leave high school, just a little bit, so we can kind of catch up on each other. Have you had anything interesting to happen to you that's either funny or interesting that you'd just like to share with us in a sort of brief, encapsulated form? Yeah, Ed?
I got to ride on an airline flight once with Conway Twitty.
You and him sang together?
No, we just on the same plane. I thought that was pretty good.
That is pretty good. Yeah, Carl?
I'll give anybody $1,000 to guess who I worked with at Sears and Roebuck in downtown Houston, Texas. No, I told you, don't say anything.
Tell me.
Just give him the money.
Tell me.
Anyway, when I moved to Houston, my first job there, I went over to Sears and worked there for about 3 months. And a very important person worked with me. He didn't really work. He stood at the elevator and watched the women go up and down the elevator. And he attended University of Houston just down the block.
That must have been Maggie.
Tell us who it was.
George Bush.
Oh, really?
Well, our president, George Bush.
Does he
Marvin
contact?
told him he needed to get out and learn how to make $1.
Boy, did he ever.
Yeah.
Do you contact him from time to time?
No, I haven't talked to him.
You need to have a reunion of these.
That's right.
Kenneth?
Well, I taught at West Georgia College, and one of my colleagues was Newt Gingrich.
Oh.
Who? Newt Gingrich. Hadn't heard of it.
Have you heard of Kenneth Sam?
Don't know her.
Somebody else have something interesting that's happened to you to share with us?
I had Alex Haley for a patient for quite some time. He's very interesting and knowledgeable. Joy Baker, Howard Baker, and Dolly Parton's dad, and Dolly was in.
I got one more.
Okay, Carl?
I got to escort Jane Mansfield one evening.
How close were you standing?
Up this far.
I'll bet you if we were at her reunion tonight, she'd tell that Carl.
Well,
Did remember
I
Carl.
was just a little lowly Marine, and she was out at the base.
Oh, you were a Marine, okay.
She came out to base to give a talk. She didn't do a lot of talking, she did a lot of deep breathing.
Oh, she couldn't stand him, Carl. She was close to you.
Had something to do with journey, you know, or something like that.
I
And
got
anyway, my assignment was to escort her up on the stage and reach the microphone and get her set up. And then when she got through with the talk, I escorted back to her seat.
I had dinner with General Myers, Chief of Staff, about 3 or 4 years ago. Not alone, but in a group of 20 other people. And met General Myers.
Good, thank you. Somebody else? It looks like we're on famous people here. I didn't
Anybody
know.
know General Odom?
From Crossville.
Yeah, he and I picked corn together. Over on UT Barn.
Can you remember Ray Conniff and his orchestra? I was married to his general manager's daughter.
Which time was it?
2 or 3 or 4. After Ethel died, I was bachelor for a couple of years, and then Pat and I were married to him.
Okay.
But the people that I ran into in California over the years, if I sat down right now and started talking about telephone on planes, Cliff Robertson, one of the Cowboys and movie stars. Of course, Claude Akins came to the Akins family reunion. He was a distant cousin, and he was in High Noon. I danced with like a girl.
That black-headed girl.
That really narrowed it down.
That black girl. Be nice to that black girl.
Television, she's still in there now and
That
then.
black-headed girl?
Don't call her.
Yeah.
And so we're going.
Tommy, I'm surprised you haven't told them about the time you ran into me in Atlanta.
Yeah, I ran into her in Atlanta.
Yeah, that is something serious. He should not have left that out.
I ran into, what was that?
All right.
Lyle Williams down in Atlanta one time too, in the airport.
Lyle
Yeah,
and
you
his
remember
son,
his dad?
Dennis.
Dennis, his dad.
Dennis.
Okay, Tommy.
Dennis is who I
Well,
ran
we
into.
did, we ran into.
We got married in that
They,
year.
we didn't introduce you as a keynote speaker. did we?
When I first started teaching, I had the fortune or misfortune of having one of the boys' kids in class. I think she was the one, Marla. That, I was talking about history. I was teaching history. I said, just can't you remember? I want you to remember certain things, you know, and why things happen. Mr. Ted, well, says, history must have been easy for you when you were in school. I said, why's that? I said, well, there wasn't much of it then. She got an A plus.
Who else has got a good story? Floyd?
Cece, she joined the Navy in 2001. She's a second class petty officer, and she's going to Gulfport.
She's
Still
still-
this month.
she's still
At
working.
the end of September.
Still working in munitions, loading.
Yeah, she's still in that. That's what like blew what Kay's mind. She come up there and first thing she dropped on her, she said, I joined the Navy today. And we said, honey, your life is fixing to change seriously, you know? And then she said, guess what I'm getting into? And I said, what's that, honey? She says, mine warfare. I said, good grief. I said, there's one thing about it, though. I said, if you ever mess up, there's going to be no pain and suffering to it.
Okay, now tell us, let's see, some of you tell us something your children have done or your grandchildren have done. That was kind of interesting and funny. Anybody got something you want to tell us? You brag about them a little bit or tell us something
Mine
funny you
grew up at
did?
45.
What?
I grew up at 45.
Somebody else? Kids ever said anything funny or did anything funny that you want to share with us?
Well, my son was a freshman in music at Florida State, and Florida State's got has a big marching band, about 420. And a little freshman, he went out for drum major, and he got beat. We had to go over to console him. And I says, what'd you do that for? I says, you know, it takes politics and knowing everybody and all this. to get to be a drum major. He said, well, my senior year, I'm going to be drum major. And his senior year, he was the drum major of the Marching Chiefs. And he was at the, which bowl was that? Fiesta Bowl, when Tennessee beat Florida State then.
So you got real busy politicking.
He did it himself. I was proud of him.
Max, what did you say one time with scrimmage and football and Johnny always hitting you every time you got a hold of the ball?
Well, was it you supposed to block him? Who was it? Who? What?
I don't know who it's supposed to be, but you didn't, I ain't gonna say the words you said.
Well, it's been recorded.
I'm mad and said, come out and get Johnny Hall.
We used to live in Cookville. I lived in Cookville for 8 years. I was teaching at Tennessee Tech. And I don't remember exactly the year that tornado hit Cookville so bad, back in the 70s. 73. Okay, 73. We lived there. And I was in Memphis the night that it hit. And my wife and 2 kids were home. They were both preschool kids. And we just lived in a little one-story house. They didn't have any place to go, so we got out in the hallway. And that tornado came through it. It just barely missed our house. It got the house across the street, big old 100-year-old trees. And, I mean, you saw what it did down there. It's just absolutely devastating. It scared our kids to death. I mean, just absolutely scared to death, although it didn't hurt them. It scared them so bad they wouldn't sleep in their own beds. So I was going to San Francisco on a trip. I was going to be gone a week, and they were taking me to the airport in Nashville. And so I said, girls, look, while I'm gone, go back and sleep in your own beds. We're not going to have a tornado come through here like that again. It's been years and years since. Well, you know it well. Go back and sleep in your bed. In fact, if you will, I'll bring you a nice surprise from San Francisco. We will, Daddy, we will. So they let me out the airport. I said, remember, girls, sleep in your own beds. Because, you know, it was kind of getting crowded in the same bed. So they said, we will, Daddy, we will. So I came back in after being gone to San Francisco about a week. And at that time, you didn't have any security issues, and people came down and they sat and, you know, they waited as big as this thing right here, and people waited to catch a plane, and waited to pick up other people, and it was just absolutely full. So my wife and 2 kids were sitting all the way over at the wall. And Molly, my 5-year-old at the time, when I walked in the door over here, just as quick as I came in the door, she jumped up on her feet, and she said, Daddy, Daddy, guess what? Nobody slept with Mama while you were gone.
Did you tell her you was glad to hear that, right?
I was glad to hear it, but your mother didn't appreciate it. Somebody else have a story that you share with us, or comment about something you think's kind of interesting that's been going on that you'd like to share with us here tonight before we break up? Anybody?
That reminded me of my boys when they were small. Me and the boys had been to church, Sunday school, and church that morning. We came back, Glenn was still laid up in the bed. I jumped up in bed with him, and the kids jumped up in the bed with us, and they was fighting. They wanted, one of them wanted this kind of candy, another wanted that kind of candy, and Glenn said, if y'all will get out of here and shut up, when we leave, I'll take you and get you some candy. So we got ready and we left, and we went to this little store, and she had the door open, and kids running in, and my little one went in there, and she said, my mom and Daddy was in the bed, and said, Daddy said if we would get out and leave them alone and shut up, then he would buy us some candy.
You know, in our graduating class, we had 108 people in our graduating class, and you would think that out of 108 people, there would be a lot of fondness from one another. You know, I guess we all loved each other, but it's kind of strange. I don't believe we've ever had a class come through our high school with 100 people or 108 people, something like that, that had as few people to marry within the class as we did. We've got one couple here tonight who married a classmate. One couple married a classmate. There were actually 2 couples in our class who married classmates, Joanne Wilbanks and Billy Kimmer, and they're both dead. But the other couple back there is Glenn White and Juanita Jackson, right back there, who married each other. The only ones out of the whole class that were wise enough to stay within our group.
And you notice both of them are white-headed and part their hair on the same side.
You don't know where it comes from. Anybody got
All the other girls told me no.
Well, you did all right though outside. You still got 3 or 4 more times to go. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming, and again, thank you, Anna, for doing this. And the next time that we get together for our 100th reunion, or whatever it is we get together for, when we got to get back together, let's see if we can't get some more of our classmates to come. And I think it's great that you came. If we knew it's going to be hot tonight, and we've been fortunate to have a little bit more of a breeze than I thought we might, but we knew it's hot tonight. And thank you for coming out, the effort that you made to come. Charles, you want to say something?
Yeah, you was talking about we might do this again sometime. Kind of a joke. My mom lives next door to us. She lives by herself, took her out of the garden, and does her work. She graduated from high school in Melbourne, Tennessee. Blacksaw County.
Yeah.
Last year, she got a card from the Blacksaw County Alumni Association. Counting her, they had found 5 in her senior class. They wanted to know if they wanted to have a reunion. She's 94 years old.
Anna, what do you think?
Danny, she wouldn't go because she's afraid they think she looks too old.
I heard this story. This is a little bit, I probably shouldn't tell this, but I'm going to anyway. This lady got up in church. The preacher was preaching on forgiveness of sins. So he just poured it on. He was preaching on forgiveness. You got to learn to forgive your neighbor. Now he said, now how many of you are willing right now to raise your hand and say, I'm going to forgive my neighbor. I'm going to forgive everybody that I've got something against. There's about half of them raised their hand and said they would. And he said, well, now that's not enough. And so he started preached about 10 more minutes. He just let the hammer down on it. He said, now, how many of you are willing to forgive those who've done something wrong against you? This time, he got about 3/4 of the congregation. He started in again. He preached for about 5 more minutes, just about as hard as he could preach. And he raised his hand and he said, now, how many of you are willing to forgive those who've done something against you? He said, just raise your hand. Everybody in the congregation raised their hands except this one lady. He said, Miss Jones, I'm kind of surprised at you. He said, why is it that you aren't willing to forgive your enemies? He said, I ain't got none. And he said, you ain't got none? He said, now come up here at the front. He put his arm around her. He said, now folks, he said, here is the kind of person that you ought to be. How old are you? She said, I'm 89. He said, well, you're 89 years old. You lived 89 years. You've not got anybody that you've got any kind of a grudge against. You just tell us, how did the Lord help you to do that? She said, I outlived the sons of bitches. Okay, thank you for being here.